Mr. Speaker, and I rise as one of those law-abiding, tax-paying Scots that the honourable member opposite so clearly has such a disdain for. And regardless of what the honourable members opposite would have us believe, it is now clear to everyone that following last week's unprecedented power grab in the Scottish Parliament and its powers, the Conservative Party and this government have finally abandoned any pretence of even having the remotest commitment to devolution. That a power grab of this scale can be enacted by one Parliament over another demonstrates once and for all that the Tories haven't the slightest interest in respecting the fundamental principles of devolution. The contemptuous way in which Scottish democracy was dismissed by this place last week with a 15-minute lecture from the Right Honourable Member from Aylesbury was simply further proof that Scotland has no future in this United Kingdom, and the sooner we are free from it, the better. The Tories' disgraceful disdain for the will of the Scottish people, as expressed by the democratically elected members of the Scottish Parliament, shows the Tories in their true colours. Anti-democratic, narrow-minded, backward-looking and insular. People who, as devout British nationalists, let us never forget, were from the outset vehemently opposed to the creation of a Scottish Parliament. For a century or more, the official Conservative Party position was to oppose even the slightest devolution of political power from London to Scotland. And it's only when confronted with the inevitable and in the face of overwhelming public opinion did they publicly at least embrace the idea of a devolved Parliament in Edinburgh. They may have changed their tune, Mr. Speaker, but like the leopard, they have not changed their spots. So it should not come as a surprise to anyone. At the first opportunity, they are using Brexit as an excuse to roll back on the devolution settlement, a settlement they never believed in, to try and claw back to London as many of the powers and competencies of the Scottish Parliament as they possibly can. Last week, the Secretary of State made the excuse of these not being normal times, and how in these circumstances that somehow justified his carrying out this power grab. What he failed to mention, Mr. Speaker, was of course that according to the UK Government's own lawyers, when they went to the Supreme Court recently, when they said, and I quote, "Whether circumstances are normal is a quintessential matter of political judgment for the Westminster Parliament." So there you have it. The UK Government will decide what is and isn't normal, and it's they and they alone who will decide what powers the Scottish Parliament has and what powers will be restricted for up to 7 years without that Parliament's consent. And is there anyone so naive who really believes that having grabbed those powers to themselves, that the UK Government will return them to Scotland after 7 years? Not a chance. Mr. Speaker, no one should be in any doubt what is at stake here. Because once the precedent is established that Westminster can overrule a majority vote in the Scottish Parliament whenever there is disagreement, a standard will have been set and the ground rules will have been established. And it's my genuine fear that if we allow this to happen, it will be used by the Tories for a pretext of seizing powers again and again and again whenever it suits them. As my right honourable friend for Ross Skyler said, this isn't about the SNP versus the Tory government, because the Scottish Parliament, the SNP, the Labour Party, the Greens and the Liberal Democrats all recognised that what the Tories were planning was nothing less than a power grab, an outrageous attack on the democratically elected Parliament of Scotland. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear, this is Scotland against the Tories. Let me repeat, this is Scotland against the Tories. And if it does nothing else, then it should send a message to Downing Street and Dover House that their Tory power grab on our Parliament will not be tolerated by the people of Scotland. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, let no one in this be any doubt the people of Scotland are furious at what is taking place. We've heard much of how these 87 powers are to be returned directly to Holyrood and only 24 are to be appropriated by Westminster. To me, Mr. Speaker, that is akin to a burglar having been caught breaking into your house, defending himself by saying, "You should be grateful I only nicked your telly." It's an absolute nonsense of an argument. A power grab is a power grab is a power grab, whether it's 1, 24 or 111. The precedent will have been set, and that's why it has to be opposed. The theft of just one of Scotland's powers is one too many.
Ross Tom